Hello students, a very good evening. Let us continue our lectures on Aristotle's Poetics. I hope you have gone through my seventh lecture, and today I'll be giving the eighth lecture, that is continuing on Aristotle's Poetics only. So let me share the screen. I would like to start from where I have stopped in the previous lecture. Okay, in the previous lecture, I have actually um, dwelt upon some points regarding the unity and the length of the plot. So let us refresh the um, understanding of this concept of unity and length of plot, how they are connected, and what Aristotle actually says regarding this unity and length of the plot. Okay, so the plot should have a certain length and unity. This is what Aristotle says in Poetics, and because he says this because he believes that the work of art is shaped, limited, and complete in itself, unlike the real life. This I have explained to you in the previous lecture also, and this is in Aristotle's Poetics chapter 6 that Aristotle explains or states like this. And he emphasizes this concept of unity in different ways throughout Poetics. The concept of unity in the plot is more important for Aristotle. That is why he kept on emphasizing it in different chapters of Poetics, as we can see from the lectures of Humphrey House, the book which we are following to understand Aristotle Poetics. So where he referred and how he referred, let us see in the next slide. Aristotle says, I hope the slide is visible to you, so you can read here. I am giving just trying to present this lecture in a slow pace so that you all will be able to understand and follow my lecture. And one more thing I just want to say is try to listen to the lectures again and again so that you will follow what I am teaching. And one more thing, whatever you are looking on the slides is like the notes for you. If you put together all the points, you can develop an essay, and some of the points are useful for the short answer question also. So my request is, as the slide is visible, you try to note down all the points and try to make your own answers for different questions that are possible in on this topic, that is Aristotle's Poetics. I have given you the possible questions also in my previous lectures. You please listen to them again and try to make a notes of your own depending upon the points that are being presented in this PPT. Okay, so let us see here what Aristotle stated regarding the unity of plot in different chapters. So as you could see here, chapter 7, he says the action is a whole and complete in itself. See, you know the meanings of whole and complete, etc. So when you say that is a tragedy, and the tragedy is the imitation of serious action, and that action, how that action should be, it should be a whole. See, let me tell you one thing. If you go and watch a movie, and if you think that the plot of that movie is not a whole or not complete, you will come back and discuss. When you come and just discuss informally with friends, you may say that it was incomplete and the story was incomplete, left incomplete, or the plot was not unit, not showing the unity, etc. So in the same manner, Aristotle says that the action that is presented in a tragedy should show some unity. He has so many synonyms for that. That is why he says a whole and complete in itself. That should be complete in itself. And then chapter 8, he says it is one action, a complete whole. So when you watch a drama or watch a movie or read a drama, you should feel that it is one action, it is one whole, and we feel that feeling of completeness. Then only the poet or the dramatist is successful in creating a complete plot or a unified plot, or he was able to brought unity into the plot. Okay, then in chapter 23 he says epic, no less than tragedy, is based on a single action. See, of course, epics are based on single action. The best example I can again and again refer to is when a epic comes, it is Milton's Paradise Lost. Don't think that I am repeating, but I am repeating it because it is the greatest epic, and you are familiar with that because we have read Paradise Lost, book one in your, I think. First semester. So you are familiar with this. And what is the action or unity of action is found in the epic. And of course, it is not only in epic, in tragedy also. You have, for example, Shakespeare's tragedies. There also you will find the unity of action. You know, as you have read the preface to Shakespeare by Samuel Johnson, you could have read how Johnson painstakingly explains that Shakespeare, of course, tries to present the unity of action. Okay, so in the similar manner, chapter 23 of Aristotle's Poetics, he said that tragedy is based on a single action. So to maintain the unity, it needs a single action, one that is complete whole in itself. See here, whole, complete, single, all these words are recurring again and again, and these recurring or repetition is only to emphasize the need to maintain the unity in the plot. So you might be wondering, what is this in chapter? He said whole, complete, one action, complete whole, single action, a complete whole in itself. You may be thinking that again and again he's saying the same thing. Of course, again and again reiterating the same thing is only to make us to realize the unity, the concept of unity in a plot. So please remember that. This is what Aristotle has stated in different chapters, and the recurrence of this concept in different chapters, in different words, indicates the significance of the unity of action that should be maintained in the plot of a tragedy or a tragedy in general. So let us go to the next slide, and what he is saying here again in chapter 23. See, he says the idea of wholeness or completeness of plot, as he says, should be like all the organic unity of a living creature. This I have explained already in the previous lecture, and I have put the word symmetry within brackets only to let you know what is symmetry and how this organic unity of a living creature is applicable to plot, etc. So if you look at a man or woman or animal or a bird or whatever it is, if you look at them in what you say, pieces, separate parts, they may not appear beautiful. Okay, but when you look at them as a whole, they exhibit the organic unity, which is called symmetry, the symmetrical structure, etc., which of course shows us the beauty of that object, either it be man or an object in the nature or animal, etc. Okay, so he says that the unity of a tragedy should be like the unity, that is the organic unity that is present in every living creature to be beautiful. So and he says it should be constructed to be beautiful. So he says a plot should be constructed to be beautiful, like the beautiful, like a beautiful young girl or young boy, or handsome, as we say, etc., like a living creature. And every whole made up of parts must present a certain order in its arrangement of parts. So if you look at your body, you have a certain order that is maintained in joining the different parts of your body. Just like that, in a tragedy also, the different parts of a tragedy or a plot should be joined in such a manner that it will make a whole. Okay, and it presents a certain order to look at from the outside, or when you watch it or when you read it, you will feel that it is presented in a certain order, and its parts are arranged in certain order, that it gives a feeling of unity existing in the tragedy or plot. And of course, this comparison, see, in the previous slide, we have seen the comparison of a drama or plot, or tragedy or plot, to this living creature. Okay, that is the organic unity of a living creature. So he says that this parts of a drama should be unified or brought united in such a way as the parts of a human body or animal, when combined together or put together, look very beautiful, aesthetic. Okay, so this comparison, this idea, the comparison of the drama to an organic living creature, etc., is not a new thing, because we could see this fact in Plato's Phaedrus, okay, which was written in 264 BC, and where, of course, Plato is referring to his master, and where Socrates says of a speech. See, even it is not a tragedy, but even if you have a speech should have some parts. Okay, and how a speech should be, Socrates said in as quoted by Plato in Phaedrus, a speech ought to be put together like a living creature. See here, the comparison is given as a living creature, the speech, with a body of its own, not headless or footless, but having middle parts and extremities properly in keeping with each other and with the whole. See, previously I have explained, imagine a man with long legs or long arms and short trunk, and of course a huge head, etc. So I told you, if you imagine how absurd it may look, okay, or you will be sometimes laughing, or you will feel disgusted to look at such bodies which are not arranged in a very what you call, in an order, okay, following an order. So the beauty lies in the arrangement of the parts, not in the individual parts. So like that, the speech also, Socrates said that this should be together like a living creature, and it should have a body of its own, and it should have an end, or it should have a bottom or a head, bottom, but having middle parts and extremities properly. So the middle should not be too lengthy, or the beginning should not be too lengthy, or the ending should not be too lengthy, and they should be arranged in a certain manner to appear that they are all like a unit. And he says that they properly in keeping with each other and with the whole. So on the whole, if you take speech or a tragedy as a human body or a living creature, how the living creature appears beautiful with all its parts put together in certain order, the drama or speech should be like that. Okay, that is what Aristotle stated. And this comparison of the living creature is not new to Aristotle, because he, of course, has learned it from his master Plato. And of course, Plato brought the view of his master Socrates. So then the ideas of harmony, proportions, and completeness are all present in the Greek idea of what is beautiful. Actually, these ideas of wholeness, completeness, proportionate, etc., all these words are imbibed or included in the Greek idea of what is beautiful. You might be having a Greek word for beautiful, and in now we have a facility. If you utter in the Google, Google, and give the translation of beautiful in Greek, you will get the word for beautiful in Greek actually. So if you are just curious to know, you can just listen here. I don't know how to include an audio here, all the technicalities. Because of that, I am not able to make you to listen this word here. So if you listen to that Greek word beautiful, which is translated into English as beautiful, it is actually in Greek language. If you say beautiful, it it has a completeness and a proportion in it, and it is to mean that structural completeness plus good health. See, if a human body is very well, what you say, well constructed, in the sense you have good strong legs, or hands, or good trunk, head, every part is good, but if you don't have health, how it will be? We may not consider that as the real beauty. So beautiful is not something which is external. We have dwelt this concept of beauty in your second semester also, where we have gone through Keats wood. I think I think beauty, truth, and truth, beauty. That is all ye need to know on earth. That is what Keats says, and what is the philosophy included in this. Beauty is not just outward. Okay, like it is not just structural completeness, but it should have good health also. So, like that. It is not enough if you say that a plot is having this a structural parts, all structural parts, like as I have mentioned in the previous lecture, like prologue, the episodes, and the exode, and then the choral songs, etc. All are there, but if it is not what you say, weaved or constructed in a good manner, it may not exhibit the quality of having the unity within and among the parts that are included to make a plot or a tragedy. So the good health is like what you say, what is the unity that the drama exhibits. Okay, this emphasis on organic unity of the plot strengthens the fact that plot for Aristotle is not just a formal, dead, mechanical kind of unity. See, when he is saying organic unity, it is very important, a whole, complete, etc. He means to say that plot is not, not a word which just means a formal technical term for dividing the drama or plot, etc. It is not mere a dead or mechanical unity that he is, but a unity that is filled with life, as the unity that is present in ourselves. You can take like that. So these are all only to reveal you the importance or the significance that Aristotle is attaching to this concept of unity of plot. Remember that. So according to Aristotle, the unity of plot is very important. And why he says this organic unity? He says this concept of organic unity facilitates the poet, with the vigor and freedom of creation, emphasizing on the life. So in chapter 6 of Poetics, Aristotle says that actually this concept of organic unity actually gives the strength to the poet and also the freedom for the poet to create. And the first essential, the life and the soul, so to speak, of tragedy is the plot. And he gives why a plot should exhibit unity, because Aristotle says that the first essential thing among the different parts of tragedy that he mentioned, as I have mentioned to you in the previous lecture, you can go back and see, or you might have noted, you can go back and see what are the different elements of a tragedy. And out of all these elements, of course, Aristotle puts plot first. And I told you that it is the heart of plot. So if the heart is not functioning, means you know what happens with our life. Okay, so in the similar manner, Aristotle says, you know, he is comparing to the living creatures. And the tragedy, of course, we may think, if you are what do you say, dividing the living things and the non-living things, etc., we may think that, of course, tragedy, a book, if it is a book in your hands, you may think it is a non-living thing and we are living things. But for Aristotle, it is not so. Okay, though it is a tragedy. And moreover, in those days, tragedies are staged, or they are spectators keep sit and keep watching, and they will it is a lively action where spectators may give comments, and of course the actors also, they just involve in the character and they try to put life into the character. Okay, so that is why tragedy for Aristotle is not a mere mechanical or artificial thing, but it is like a living creature. And that is why he is emphasizing with many words and at many instances the significance of the plot. Okay, and then the concept of unity, as Aristotle is emphasizing that much, actually tends towards uniformity. See here, in our body we have different parts, but these different parts will function like a unit, so to bring out uniformity. See, if you have 5 different fingers, okay, in your palm, and if you want to catch something, all should act in one direction. So like if I want to catch something, if I'm holding a mobile like this, all if think if I am not able to handle my mobile like this, okay, and if think that this goes in one way and this goes in one way and the thumb goes in another way, can you hold this? No, we can't hold this. So this is what, you know, this is why, though there are different parts uh, in a drama, they should function towards they unitedly towards uniformity, as the parts of our body are functioning. Okay, like if you want to look at some object, and if your eyes, you know, 2 eyes that we are having, if they won't focus on one thing, can you watch anything? You know, if imagine that your one eye is going this way and that way, and can our brain sense what the object we are looking at? So how, see the uniformity, the unity and the uniformity, the best example in front of us is our body only. So just like the human body, that of course moves for the functions for the effective movement. In the similar manner, Aristotle says different parts of plot tend to the effective movement of a tragedy. So this is that is why he is always emphasizing upon unity, and that too organic unity. Okay, I hope you got my point, how why Aristotle is again and again emphasizing on the concept of unity. Okay, then he also says that the length of the drama always helps to maintain the unity of action. So the length of the drama, how long it should be, that is, there are some, what you say, restrictions or criteria to decide the length of the drama. And for that, actually, Aristotle says, for this criteria, he says the first criteria is the function of tragedy itself. That is, because the function of tragedy is to show the hero passing by a series of probable or necessary stages from misfortune to happiness. Okay, the length, how long the drama should be that lengthy, where it can be able to show the passage of the hero, the hero, from happiness to misery. Okay, or misfortune to happiness, or happiness to misery also, the vice versa. But usually in a tragedy, it is the movement from happiness to misery. Okay, so the length of the drama should be that much, that it can accommodate all the incidents or acts that happen in between the passage of the hero, from happiness to misery or misery to happiness. And one more criteria that Aristotle suggests is, the capacity of the spectator or reader. See how long a tragedy should be, or how lengthy a novel should be, etc. The capacity of the human brain. How long can you, take into your brain? The play must not exceed the length that can be compassed by the human memory. And of course, human memory, how, if a stage, if a drama is being staged, say if it goes for 3 hours, it's okay. But if it goes for 6 hours, 7 hours, can you continuously sit and watch? Perhaps that is why our modern movies are also, say, 3 hours or 2.5 hours, or not even 2.5 hours, also 2 hours also, at sometimes. And you have short films also, the shorter uh, the play or the drama, our understanding of the play or grasping of the different parts of the play or the drama, and how it is exhibiting, how, who are the characters, what are the themes, etc., can be, we can understand it more effectively than a lengthy drama. So to define the length of the drama, actually, unity, the concept of unity of action is more important. The unity of a plot, yeah, the unity of action in a plot is more important to define the length also. And the criteria, as I have already told you, that Aristotle takes this criteria of, what you call, that the tragedy should be able to include or incorporate all the incidents that happens in the life of the hero, from misfortune to happiness or happiness to misfortune. And then the drama should not be so lengthy that it is beyond the perception of the human memory. That is also Aristotle says. Okay, and then why the unity of action, is important to organize the length of a drama. Aristotle suggests the division of the drama from the point of view of speaking actors and chorus. Actually, I have given these parts in the previous lecture also. So that is the prologue episodes. The unity of action is emphasized, of course, to bring the divisions also. The prologue, the episodes, and the chorus, and I have explained you what is parode, stasima, and commerce, etc. Okay. Then, so now with this point, we have arrived at these two these three words like this, parod, stasima, comos, and then we have all the um, episodes, with this discussion of the unity of length, unity of the drama or the plot, unity of action that is required, and this unity is what, of course, assures the length of the drama, also the required drama, and this long tragedy or drama should be divided into different parts, as I have already explained to you in the previous lecture. So let us now go to next part of this lecture, that is episodes, because Aristotle, of course, has given that as unity is important, the next part of the plot, the significant aspects of the plot that are discussed by Aristotle, we have the episodes in the next. I hope my screen, I think, stopped. Let me present again to continue the lecture. Um, yeah. So this is the next part of my lecture. After the unity and length of the drama, we are coming to this actually. This is the next part of my lecture, and to refresh your memory of the significant aspects of plot, these are the plots. So we have seen the construction, we have seen unity and length, and then episodes. Now we are coming to episodes. These are all, this um, a plot has these concepts, the six concepts, and we have finished two, and now coming to the third, that is episodes. So episodes in the plot, this is the technical language that is used by Aristotle, and to make it simple, episode is nothing but the modern act, the acts, into how many acts a drama, a tragedy is divided. Okay, and there is no fixed number of episodes that there should be these many episodes only in a drama. That is not, that is not there according to Aristotle. So episodes in dramas vary in number, and of course they are like acts in the modern drama, and Aristotle, of course, gives more importance to this concept of episode also. Okay, actually, he used this word to mean in two different senses. See here, episode is used in two senses by Aristotle at two different places in poetics. First, it is to mean a technical term to indicate the structural parts of a play. So it is only a structural part of the play episode. And then he says that it is a term indicating the division of a poem. In epic, especially, he says that the episode, of course, indicates the division of a poem. See, you can here recollect Milton's Paradise Lost, and how the epic is divided into 12 books, and each book revealing us one theme, or one one unified action in one book. Okay, so each important action is divided into some into a book, and that is how we have 12 books. Okay, in Milton's Paradise Lost, the epic is divided, so it is indicated as a divisionary term. Okay, and but because he used this word in these two senses, we do not, we can't simply say that episode is simply the division. No, with episodes, of course, Aristotle means so much. And he says that he used the word episodizing, and he says this involves the creative activity of the poet, and that is why he says here episodize and episodizing, and it is these words are used to emphasize the need to divide the drama. So there is a need to divide the drama, and that is why he used. And he says that in dividing or in doing so, the poet exhibits his creativity, individuality, and originality. Now, there are no strict rules that the poet should divide the drama like this, that, etc. And these many number of episodes should be there, and so this episode should be that much of length only. Like that, there are no specific rules. There are no rules, and it is the skill of the poet. The episodizing is the skill of the poet or the creativity of the poet. And Humphrey House also says, dividing into episodes, as some other translators say, is not simply inserting or working in. Rather, it is like using essential limbs or organs of the body. See, in Telugu, you have a very familiar expression or saying like atukula bonta. Okay, you will looking at that quilt. It is like the quilt, and look, if you look at some quilts, it may appear that. It is not one, but it is made up of many. The parts are very clearly visible. Okay, and that means that the parts are not joined in a very aesthetic or creative manner. Okay, that is why these episodizing doesn't mean simply putting different parts into one unit, but it means the creativity or individuality or originality of the poet. It is not simply inserting or working in, rather it is like using the essential limbs or organs of the body, how our different parts are arranged in an aesthetic manner to present a beautiful posture or a beautiful body. Okay, outlook. That similar manner, the different parts or episodes in a drama should be put together in such a manner that the whole drama appears to be beautiful. Okay, and that is why the words episode is not a mere technical term to show the one of the structural parts of the play or the division of a poem, but it means much more to Aristotle. And Aristotle says that actually, when the writer or the dramatist sets to write a drama, he will take the story. Okay, and these stories are taken over from tradition or picked from some other extraneous source, and then comes the serious business of making it into a play or an epic. This is a creative activity. See, Milton wrote Samson Agonistes, and I think I have referred to Samson Agonistes in my previous, in our physical classroom also. It is like Samson and Delilah. So that is the story of Samson and Delilah, and how Milton could make an epic out of that. Okay, and it is Samson and Delilah story is a very popular story, and it is taken from the Christian tradition and or from extraneous source. So just like that, just like Milton, any other poet or a dramatist will take the story, the rambling and amorphous story. So the story will not have a shape when the writer takes it or the dramatist takes it. But he, after taking the story, then comes the important business of dividing it into parts and then making a unified plot out of all the series of actions, adding his own creativity. Okay, so the first phase of this process, Aristotle says, is simply reduction of the story to essentials. So they take the story and they reduce it to the essentials, and then the episodizing starts. And of course, as I told you, according to Aristotle, episodes are the essential limbs or organs of the body. Imagine our body and different parts, how the parts are very important. Just like that, episodes are also like the organs of the body, different parts of the body, and they are very important. Okay, and of the they are the organs of the body of the poem that make its life and function possible. And he says making into episodes is the vital act of creative construction. So episodes is not simply inserting, adding something like that. It is like a workman like process, a creative process. And Aristotle says that a failure in the episodizing produces a series of isolated episodes, not joined to each other by probability or necessity. This is the next concept, the significant concept in the plot that we will discuss. So, episodes should not appear as if they were brought artificially and included or just inserted. They should be parts, but weaved in such a manner that they give an impression that they are one unit, they are uniform, they act towards the effective movement of the tragedy. Okay, this is what I have to share regarding episodes, which is an important concept in the plot according to Aristotle. Okay, now I will stop sharing my screen, and because this is what I have to share with you in this lecture, and I'll be coming to the next parts of the plot in the next lectures. I request all of you to just go through these lectures, and then if you have any doubts, you are welcome to ask the doubts through WhatsApp also, either messages, text messages, or calls even. And if you want a physical direct interaction, of course, you should make it a point that you can attend the classes for a day or two, so that all doubts can be cleared, face to face. That is more effective, I think. Or we can plan a virtual class, but I have planned it, but somehow my screen could not get shared at that time, and moreover, only 8 of you have joined to the virtual class because of the lack of internet facility and all. So but however it is, you have your exams are scheduled and you have to prepare for the exams. So be cautious, keep preparing and keep reading. You have many sources in Google also, and then if you have textbooks also, you can keep going. Only thing is, listen to these recorded lectures again and again. Try to make your own notes, and if you have any doubts, try to interact with your teachers. Okay, wish you all the best. Good night.